Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very excited and honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Megan Jordan. Megan is a fourth year aerospace engineering student at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. She is both a Brooke Owens Fellow, where she worked with Amazon Prime Air, and a Patti Grace Smith Fellow in 2021. Megan is now an incoming test and flight operations intern at Blue Origin, where she will get real world aerospace industry experience. Furthermore, Megan is the president of Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics and is a recruitment coordinator and selection committee member for the wonderful Patti Grace Smith Fellowship. Megan is an incredible young aerospace leader dedicating her energy to both aerospace engineering and also DEI in the space sector. I remember when I first came across Megan's profile on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I was so excited to see all the work that she's doing to empower young students, as well as how she navigated her own aerospace career. And so I'm currently fangirling that I get to talk with her right now and hopefully one day meet her in person as well. And I'm really excited to learn about Megan's journey and how she both navigated her path as a young professional, but also her future vision in the aerospace sector. So thank you so much, Megan, for taking your time to speak with me today. I'm very excited to learn about your journey and to hear your advice as you inspire the next generation of aerospace leaders.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. I'm equally excited to meet you and hear about your journey as well.
Thank you. Yeah, to just kick off our conversation, I wanted to start off by asking about your typical day. I know as a student, it can be so hard to have a typical day because you're usually trying to build around your classes. So I'm curious to hear, how do you usually just manage your day?
Yes, that's a good question. I feel like every day is a little bit different for me, honestly, but I'll just talk about like my busiest days. So my busiest days are Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I usually wake up around 8 or 9. And during that time, I'm just doing like my morning routine. So getting ready for the day, maybe have a cup of coffee, and do things that I need to do to get started with the day. And then I have class at 11:20. So I go to class from 11:20 to 12:40, and then I leave class and I get lunch from about 12:40 to 2. And then I actually work part-time this semester as a math instructor at Mathnasium. So that has been really fun. I usually work a couple hours there, so from about 2:30 to 4, and then I head to another class at 4:20 to 5:40, and then after that I go to another class from 6 to 7:20, and then I get out of class, and then I usually do, the things that I usually do, like want to do, have dinner or maybe meet with friends, or just come home and watch like TV shows, Netflix and stuff. Really excited for Outer Banks this week. I'm gonna be watching that. So that's typically my day, class and work.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like students and their like work-life balance is so underrated because it's so hard as a student to keep up with four, five, six classes a semester sometimes, plus doing extracurriculars. And now you have a part-time job as well this semester, on top of all the advocacy and STEM communication work you do with your internships and fellowships. That's just mind blowing to me how you manage your schedule. But I'm glad you're able to still make time for your friends, family, and things you love to do outside of your academics. I think that balance is so important, and I think it keeps you, grounded and like happy, and clears your mind when you're under a lot of academic pressure. So I think that's really great to hear. And during your introduction, I mentioned that you're both a Brooke Owens Fellow and a Patti Grace Smith Fellow. And both of these fellowships are one of the two most competitive, undergraduate, graduate aerospace career-based internships that exist in the industry. And I know the application process is very tedious, but also if you are selected as a fellow, the results, the opportunities are incredible for young professionals. So, for those who don't know, could you describe a little bit more about both of these fellowships, the application process for you, as well as how did these fellowships get your foot in the door in the aerospace industry, and how did it help you as a young professional kind of navigate the aerospace sector?
Yeah. So The Patti Grace Smith Fellowship is for Black undergraduate students who want to get their start in the aerospace industry. And the Brooke Owens Fellowship is actually very similar, but it's for women and gender minorities who want to get their start in the aerospace industry. And so the requirements and the applications are very similar for both. You submit a general application, they'll ask things like your name, your university, address, things of that nature. You submit your resume, your transcripts, 2 letters of recommendation. They can be from anyone from a professor. My best friend actually wrote mine. So they can be pretty much from anyone who can really vouch for you and speak to, like your personal character and any things that you are a part of, like clubs and organizations, things of that nature. And so those are some of the requirements for the application process. So after you're done with the initial process, you're going to actually be selected for an interview. So it'll be your semifinalist round. It'll normally be with someone who is on the selection committee. So it can be the executive team. It could be, past rookies or past Patties who interview you. And they really just want to get to know you. So it's usually a phone call that asks you questions about how you got your start in the aerospace industry, what drives you, what gives you, motivation and passion, and things of that nature. And so if you get past that round, then you're a finalist. And you interview with host companies. So it'll be people like NASA, Blue Origin, Hawkeye 360. Honestly, the list goes on for companies on those organizations lists. So after that, they'll ask you questions and stuff. You'll have, depending on what company you're interviewing with, you'll do like a behavioral interview, or you can do a technical interview as well. And then after that, if you pass that, the application phase, you'll actually be a Brookie or Patti Grace Smith Fellow, which is super exciting, and you'll get a phone call from someone on the exec team. But as far as my personal experiences with getting my start in industry from these fellowships, I felt like the Patti Grace Smith Fellowship gave me my STEM identity. And I feel like, to me, what STEM identity means is feeling like I belong. So I felt like, growing up, I never really saw people who looked like me who were in the aerospace industry, aside from, people like Katherine Johnson and Mae Jemison. But those were just two out of the dozens of hundreds of people who work in the aerospace industry, right? And so being a part of the Patti Grace Smith Fellowship and the Brooke Owens Fellowship, I found, gender and racial minorities who were passionate about the same thing that I'm passionate about. And there I felt like, I was like, okay, all these people are pursuing the same thing as me. They have the same passions as me, and we can all do it. We all belong in this space. So those are my experiences with how I kind of got started in the aerospace industry. And I can definitely elaborate more if need be.
I think thank you so much for explaining about those internships as well as what it meant to you to become a fellow. Even for me as a young woman, but also with Asian American background and identity, there are not a lot of Asian Americans in this space sector specifically. In the STEM broader community, there are definitely a lot of Asian Americans, but specifically in the aerospace sector, it's hard because there aren't a lot of role models who have an Asian American background. And so I can kind of relate with you when you say that it's hard to see yourself when there's not a lot of role models you could look up to. I know like there are a few in my life, like Sarisha Bandla, like she's an incredible role model who shows us that it is possible. But it is hard when you don't see yourself. And so I'm really glad that you were able to kind of get your STEM identity through the Patti Grace Smith Fellowship. And both of these fellowships are so incredible because they pair you with a host company and you get an internship and you get to actually work at these companies, see what it's like, figure out if you want to work in these companies in the future. And now you're an incoming intern at Blue Origin, which is absolutely incredible. And I'm very excited for you and the experiences you're about to get. And so, you have been with some of the top fellowships, as I mentioned, but more importantly, you've had some really cool internship experiences, as I mentioned. And so I'm curious to hear what have been your most favorite experiences in an internship. It could be the one you had through your fellowships or something you're looking forward to with Blue Origin. I'm curious, what are some of your memories or exciting moments with your past, or maybe exciting moments you're hoping to have with your future internships?
Yes. Okay. I love that question. Excuse me. So let's see. I feel like when people talk about their internships, they probably talk about like all the technical experience that they're going to get. But honestly, my favorite thing about getting like these internships is really like meeting and connecting with people. I've met some of my best friends going to these internships. Last year I moved to Seattle, and I got a roommate there. Her name's Catherine. I'm going to name drop her now. Um, Catherine
Yes,
Dominic.
we
She's
love
also
Catherine.
yes, love her so much. I roomed with her, but I feel like, I was able just to connect with and meet other people who are just as passionate about aerospace as me. And so that's one of my favorite aspects, and also travel. I'm originally from Alabama. There's not much here, in my opinion. So getting to travel and, go to, Atlanta, where Hermes Corporation is, for my first internship, and then being able to move to Seattle for Amazon Prime Air. I mean, traveling and getting those experiences of living on your own and seeing more of the world is so important. And so those were probably some of my like favorite aspects of my internships. And then I think the same thing with Blue Origin this summer. I'll be in Van Horn, Texas. So I think that for me, it's going to be, there's nothing around in Van Horn. It's, the nearest town I think is El Paso. It's an hour and a half away. So really like meeting people and connecting with people and building those relationships is going to be very important to me, because we're just going to have each other out there. So that's probably like my favorite experiences and things that I'm looking forward to this summer.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to hear that you value those friendships and you maintain those long-term relationships in the space sector. I remember the first time, one of the conferences I went to, I roomed with another undergraduate student. Her name is Abby, and you might know Abby. I don't know, I'm not sure, and like Priya as well. And I remember like just meeting people who are very close to your age in an industry that has very few young professionals, in my opinion, who attend these types of conferences, who have these internship opportunities. It's very limited. And when you are in a place where you're surrounded with adults, but then you find that one person who's almost near your age, maintaining that relationship, fostering that connection, and navigating the space together is so important. And as a young professional myself, I know we're always looking for ways to get internship opportunities, to find mentors, or really just get your foot in the door, which has become surprisingly very difficult. And it shouldn't be this difficult for anyone to be like, I want to be a part of the space sector. Now, how do I actually go about doing it? And so I think that's like a big question surrounding so many students. And so you've been very successful in getting your foot in the door. And so I'm curious, what advice do you have for high school students, for undergraduate students who are looking to find a place in this ecosystem? What advice do you have for them to really get their foot in the door, to find opportunities, to find research experiences, or maybe even find mentors? I feel like that's a question that looms many young students.
Yeah, and that is a great question. And it's always hard, right? Because it's like, I want to get a job, but to get a job, you have to have experience. But to get experience, I have to have a
Exactly.
job. So it's like, it's kind of frustrating. And navigating that can be really hard, especially for high school and undergraduate students. I this past week I was at the National Space Grant meeting in Washington D.C. And so there they shared a bunch of opportunities for students to get involved as young as in kindergarten. So I
Oh,
would say
wow.
connect with your state space grant. So every state has a space grant. So I would say reach out to them, do research, see what opportunities they have there. They have everything ranging from, doing research to actual internships that they fund for students. So I would say maybe start at your space grant. Also for students who are in high school and undergraduate careers, I would say, we look at NASA, when we're in the aerospace industry, we say, oh my gosh, we want to work at NASA. There's smaller companies and there's other ways to get involved in aerospace that you can either use as, like a stepping stone to get to NASA, or you may find that you really like the small company. So I say applying to, smaller, non-traditional companies. We have tons of them that are emerging now. So definitely look for smaller companies. And then also the fellowships, the Patti Grace Smith Fellowship and the Brooke Owens Fellowship, you can actually apply to as out of high school. So your freshman year of college, you can apply to these opportunities. And those are great ways to get, internships right out of high school. So yeah, those are some opportunities you can look out for.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And also something that I really love about the Brooke Owens Fellowship. I'm pretty sure the Patti Grace Smith also has this, but I'm more familiar with the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and they have like a mentor they pair with you as well. So not only do you get an internship, but you get to have calls with an industry leader, a female industry leader, and really learn from their experiences and have that like mentorship experience. And so just finding these opportunities that are free that you can apply for are ways you can get your foot in the door. And sometimes sending that LinkedIn message or just putting yourself out there to some capacity could go such a long way. And reaching out to community members. As you mentioned, there's like a space grant consortium in every state. And so you could reach out to them and contact them to see if they have any opportunities for you to be involved with. So definitely just trying to reach out and to keep trying because there are ways you can be involved in the space industry regardless of your age. So I think that's great. And, throughout when you were talking about space, your internships, your excitement for aerospace, I could really see your face lighting up with happiness and with joy. And so I'm really curious to hear about your story and what inspired you to enter the space sector. Could you share a little bit more about what was the aha moment that inspired you to enter the aerospace sector?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like I had two different aha moments. There was one that was kind of like, okay, I'm interested in space. And then there was a second one to where I was like, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. I'm going to make it happen. And so growing up, I always had an interest in, STEM. I loved science. I loved math growing up. It was something I was good at as well. And so while I was in high school, my parents decided to send me to the Student Introduction to Engineering program at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. And there they immersed us in different engineering disciplines. And so the last day was actually aerospace. Um, and so there they had a live wind tunnel demonstration, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I have to know more. And so following that, Hidden Figures came out when I was in high school. I actually didn't know the story. I didn't even actually know who Katherine Johnson was until Hidden Figures came out. And so my dad took me to see that, and I saw Katherine Johnson, and I was like, oh my gosh, like she's sending people to the moon. Her calculations were responsible for sending people to the moon. And so I was like, I can do it. I can pursue aerospace. I can be an aerospace engineer. And so I decided to do research, and I found my current university, and that's how I kind of got here.
Wow, and I think that's the power of storytelling, that's the power of communication, and, a lot of times we look at, STEM and we're like, "Oh, if you like STEM, you have to be a math, science, engineering, a major, you can't be anything else," but we need those STEM communication majors as well, who can take all this complicated information, all these incredible stories, incredible work, translate it so everyone can understand, whether you're in 1st grade, whether you're in high school, whether you're not even interested in STEM and you're interested in humanities or politics, it doesn't matter. I think we need to have those communicators who can tell those stories. And, I can totally relate when you say a movie or a book inspired you, like from Star Wars, Star Trek to, The Martian. There are so many space-based movies that inspire younger kids to be like, I really wonder what's beyond, or do aliens exist? And questions like that get them to start thinking about space exploration and get them excited about the space industry. So I'm really glad to hear that you reconnected and refound your passion for STEM and specifically aerospace engineering and mathematics through the movie you watched in high school with Hidden Figures. So I think that's absolutely inspiring, and I'm glad you stuck with it, and now you're becoming a role model for other young girls to look up to as well. And in this journey of you discovering that this is what I want to do in the future to where you are now, did you have any obstacles in your journey? And if so, how were you able to overcome these obstacles?
Yes, definitely. I feel like I've faced a variety of different challenges, but the one that like immediately comes to mind as it has affected me the most is in college, I was actually diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I feel like it's something that college students don't talk a lot about. And so around like the end of my sophomore year, I got diagnosed. And it was to the point where it was kind of crippling. I couldn't really concentrate on my schoolwork. I didn't want to do my homework. I didn't really want to get out of bed, honestly. And so that has went on for a few semesters. And I find myself now in, my senior year of college to where I'm actually graduating this May. I'll be graduating a year late because I just had to like take a step back. And so, that was a huge obstacle to overcome for me. And I actually really haven't overcome it. I'm still dealing with it now and just learning how to, live with it. It's obviously gotten better, thank God. But I'm still navigating that and finding, what works for me and how I can deal with it. And that to me can look like, therapy. And like you said earlier, we have a lot of things on our plate as college students. So, finding time to do the things that you love. I obviously wasn't prioritizing my health and doing the stuff that I, really was passionate and caring about. So, I travel now. I try to do more fun things, spend more time with my friends, family, and do fun conversations like this that make me super happy to, see amazing aerospace superstars like you. So, yeah, I'm still navigating it, but yeah, that's probably one of the biggest obstacles I've had so far in, um, my college career.
Yeah, thank you for being so vulnerable and for sharing that because I'm sure you sharing that is something that a lot of younger students can really relate with because college is definitely not an easy process for everyone. And from living on your own to finding who you are, because you're so young, you're still trying to discover like who am I as a person? What do I like? What do I not like? What do I want to do? And kind of appreciating yourself and your worth is really difficult when the world is moving so fast around you in college. So I'm really glad that you were able to kind of get out of that situation and you were able to take that step back and realize, hey, I need to start taking care of myself. I need to start, doing the things that make me calm, whether it be journaling, whether it be, having a long conversation with a friend or, your parents. I think it could go so far. And I think just trying to kind of reconnect with yourself is just amazing. So really, thank you for sharing that. I know it's very hard to be so open about something that you're still recovering from, but I think it's incredible how you kind of are trying to move past that and you're trying to become a better version of yourself. And I think that's really commendable. So, really thank you for being so vulnerable. And,
You.
yeah, and in this journey of you trying to, make sure you're taking care of yourself and balancing your academics, and all of, the try to put everything together, in the aerospace in your journey so far in your career. Uh, what is your like biggest advice for younger students in particular, maybe like undergraduate students who are freshmen, sophomores, who are kind of navigating the similar, stressful situation? What advice do you have for them to kind of come out of it and to pursue these other opportunities that exist in the industry? Because it's so easy to look at someone's LinkedIn profile and be like, oh, they did all these internships, they did all these fellowships, but you don't really know what they went through behind the scenes. And I definitely did not know kind of the obstacles you had to overcome. So for someone who is in this, who what, is in the same shoes that you once were in a few years ago, kind of what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say definitely it's okay. Like it's okay first off that you're dealing with something like that. It's things that, multiple people deal with. And I think that, if we're talking about the aerospace industry as a whole, there is a huge stigma around dealing with depression and anxiety. I know for me, one of my goals is, I wanted to be an astronaut and many people want to do that, and I wanted to get like my pilot's license. And so they say, you want to go to pilot school, you want to become a pilot, you can't really have these mental health issues. And so there's this stigma around it. But first off, I just want to acknowledge that it's okay to be dealing with these problems, these issues. And I say, find your support system, most definitely. Find someone who you can confide in, who you can express these issues to. Find someone who you feel you can express these issues to safely. That was something that was super huge for me, is that, voicing how I'm feeling. Also find, ways to, like you were saying, like journal, write your thoughts down, write what you're feeling down. And then also, therapy is really good. So maybe finding, like a therapist. Um, so things of that nature. And then you also said, how do you navigate like school with depression and anxiety? Being honest and open to your professors. They are part of your support system as well. So make sure that they are aware of the things that you are going through.
Yeah, thank you for that advice. And I think one of the key points that you really mentioned was, making sure to have a support system, whether that, it comes in different forms, but making sure you're taking care of yourself is so important. And I think finding that support system that works for you is, a best way. And when you were mentioning about the mental health stigma, I think that's so true. And it's talked about a lot now as like a token term, but not in a real context, especially in the aerospace sector. The other day, I came across Naya Butler Craig's video, and she was talking about this same problem that she was having, where she had anxiety. She was undergoing depression and a lot of other internal turmoil, and she couldn't accept that she had that because she wanted to become an astronaut. And to become an astronaut, you don't qualify to become an astronaut if they diagnose you to have a mental health illness or a condition, or it's not even an illness in my opinion. I think it's just a state of mind that we put into a box. And so I think it's so important that we come up as an industry, we start talking about it. We're not afraid to talk about it because we can't reach our goals. And I think it's so important that we start building that support system around it so that younger students or even adults who are facing this feel confident to express how they're feeling without, consequences or worrying about the negative effects of something that they said 10 years ago. So I think that's so important. And, really thank you for bringing that to light. And kind of gearing a little bit away from your own personal journey, from the experiences you've had so far, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your insights in the aerospace sector. So, kind of changing the topic a little bit, I'm curious to hear about what makes you nervous and what makes you excited for the future of the aerospace industry.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to start with excitement first. I think what excites me the most is that, you have all these like commercial space companies popping up. It seems like every day now, right? So
Yeah.
with that becomes more opportunities for our younger generation. So for, the K through 12 students. So that's what excites me the most is that we can get the younger generation involved in the aerospace industry since so many new things are being created. Now, what I'm nervous about and what concerns me is that as these new, I guess, companies and like avenues and pursuits are being created, is that, we have to worry about the militarization of space. And that kind of scares me that, I know, the military, they're keeping us safe and things of that nature. We have satellites that are in space just for that reason. But it also scares me that those things, those technologies that are emerging can be used for bad. And so that's something that concerns me a little bit because, space has always been this kind of neutral territory, this neutral space for us. So I'm a little afraid that as we, these new technologies emerge and we're launching more things into space that, we may have these security concerns. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree on both sides of the picture with the excitement part. With the different companies that are starting up, we are starting to expand the space sector. We are expanding the workforce. The industry itself is becoming larger. I think within the next decade, we're estimated to be $1 trillion industry. And I think that's so mind-blowing to me, and how we're rapidly expanding, and we're thinking of sending humans again to the moon, sending humans potentially to Mars, and the timeline that's developing. I think it's so crazy, and I'm so glad to be living in this era where space is starting to come to the forefront, and we're really starting to talk about the advantages and the benefits of the space industry in all of these subcategories, whether it be health, engineering, innovation, technology, climate crisis. I think there are so many subtopics that space just encompasses and addresses. So I'm very excited for the future of space and to continue seeing the industry to expand and grow. And what makes me nervous, again, I definitely agree with you. We are expanding our technology very rapidly. I think SpaceX has been one of the forefront private companies who's been doing this, and it's been helping in both the military side as well as the science side. And so trying to make sure we're finding that correct balance where space is not going to become more, it's already been a very government based agency. Like, space has been created for government political affair purposes, but hopefully space can start becoming more of this international cooperation towards a bigger goal, and the space industry itself can be neutral and remain neutral like we've had in the International Space Station. So I really hope we can find that correct balance, and I know the space policy professionals are working hard to make sure that is the case. So I definitely agree with both of your points. Yeah, so now that we're able to learn a little bit more about your journey, your insights, as well as some of the obstacles you've had, I felt like I know you so much better as a person than I did before when I saw you on paper on, a LinkedIn page. I feel like I know you so much better. My last and final question for you is what final piece of advice do you have for young students regarding the pursuit of a passion in STEM, aerospace, really just any career? A piece of advice you wish you knew when you were a little bit younger. You're already very young, but if you can kind of time travel and tell your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Yes. So I actually wrote this down. I write down my advice. So you do not have to have a plan and to always be open and consider non-traditional ways to get your start in the industry, whether that's aerospace, whether that's medicine, any industry that is of interest to you, be open. I have a little story about that. So I feel like for me, with the Patti Grace Smith Fellowship when I first applied, um, I was very set on, I'm going to get matched with NASA, or I'm going to get matched with Blue Origin, or I'm going to get matched with Lockheed Martin. And that did not happen. That was my plan, but that did not happen. I ended up working at Hermes, of course. And that experience has been one of the best experiences that I've ever had. The people I was able to meet, I loved my team. The work that I was doing was absolutely so cool. And I still talk to some of the interns to this day. I actually had one of the interns, he works as a full-time engineer now. He came to speak to my university about opportunities they have at Hermes, and he was also a mentor for one of the projects that I'm on. So, that was very good for me, and it's absolutely propelled my career. And fast forward to now, I'm interning at Blue Origin this summer, so it all worked out. So my advice is just to, not have a plan, consider other ways and other avenues to pursue your dreams, and you'll eventually get there. You can't see it now, maybe, but you'll eventually get there.
That's incredibly comforting to hear as a student myself. And I think you just shared such incredible advice, which is you can have a plan, but it's not always going to go your way. And you have to be willing to embrace that change because at the end of the day, you're going to find some value out of that opportunity or out of that, exit. And you're going to get an opportunity that's even better in the future. Every time you get an opportunity, it kind of you might get closed down, you might not get it, you might apply and get rejected, but that's just a redirection. And I've heard so many incredible professionals like yourself on this podcast to kind of say the same advice, which is, failure is a rejection is a redirection, or failure is not really a failure because it's just teaching you lessons to become even more successful with your next opportunity. And it's teaching you to become a better version of yourself, to push yourself. And so I think it's very it's comforting for me as a younger, young professional who's just first year in college to hear that advice from a senior as well, to be like, hey, you will apply for all these opportunities. It might not always go 100% the way you planned, but you're going to learn something from that opportunity and it might turn out to be better than you expected, or you might get an opportunity that's even cooler than what you wanted in the first place. So that's definitely a piece of advice that I will keep in mind. And I'm sure every young student and adult who's listening will really try to ingrain in themselves. So thank you so much for Megan for taking your time to talk with me today. I literally am it was such an honor talking with you today and to hear about your journey, to hear about the work you're doing. There's not a lot of young professionals who are making their mark in the industry. And seeing you really it's so inspiring for a young student like myself to believe that I can have a voice in important rooms. So thank you so much for being an incredible role model. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person one day.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person one day as well. And thank you so much for having me. This has been absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much.